The U.S. government is divided into three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. Each branch has its own unique responsibilities and powers, designed to keep the system balanced and prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful. The Supreme Court sits at the very top of the judicial branch, making final decisions on the nation's most important legal questions. It is often called the court of last resort because its rulings are final and binding. Its main job is to ensure that laws and presidential actions follow the U.S. Constitution. The justices interpret what the Constitution means in modern times, applying its principles to new and complex issues. Supreme Court rulings set standards for all other courts and can shape American life for generations. These decisions can affect everything from individual rights to the powers of government. The court consists of 9 justices, appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. They serve for life, which helps them remain independent from political pressure and public opinion. Their decisions impact civil rights, free speech, business regulations, and government power. The court's influence reaches into nearly every aspect of American society. On October 6, 2025, the Supreme Court made a major decision about tariffs, taxes on imported goods. This case drew national attention due to its potential impact on the economy and international trade. The case involved tariffs on steel and aluminum imposed by former President Trump. These tariffs were controversial, sparking debate among lawmakers, businesses, and the public. The court's ruling to overturn these tariffs sparked debate about the balance of power between the president and Congress, especially in areas like trade and national security. It raised questions about who should have the final say in setting such important policies. This decision is part of a broader examination of presidential authority, including the president's power over independent agencies and the limits of executive action. As we explore this case, we tell, we bonds, we bulbwow. So say, we consider how the justices weighed complex arguments about the economy, national security, and the structure of American government, revealing the far-reaching impact of Supreme Court decisions. Tariffs are essentially taxes placed on imported goods, and they play a significant role in shaping a country's trade policy. Governments often use tariffs to protect domestic industries from foreign competition, aiming to support local jobs and businesses. In 2018, the Trump administration made headlines by imposing 25% tariffs on imported steel and 10% on aluminum, citing national security concerns as the primary reason. The administration argued that a robust domestic metals industry was vital for the nation's defense, since steel and aluminum are essential for manufacturing military equipment and infrastructure. To justify these sweeping tariffs, the administration invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, a rarely used law that allows the president to act if imports are found to threaten national security. After an investigation, the Department of Commerce concluded that high levels of steel and aluminum imports did pose such a threat, leading to tariffs on countries around the world, including some of America's closest allies. This move became a cornerstone of the Trump administration's America First economic policy, which prioritized U.S. industries and workers. The tariffs were highly controversial. U.S. steel and aluminum producers welcomed them, hoping for a revival of their industries and more jobs. However, many manufacturers and businesses that rely on these metals strongly opposed the tariffs, fearing negative impacts on their operations. These companies argued that the tariffs significantly raised their costs for raw materials, making their finished products less competitive, both at home and abroad, and ultimately hurting American consumers through higher prices. The policy set off a major economic and legal battle, sparking heated debates over the president's use of national security as a justification for trade protection. The controversy quickly moved from the marketplace to the courts, as lawsuits challenged the administration's authority. The outcome of these legal battles would test the limits of presidential power in shaping U.S. trade policy and set important precedents for the future. The stage was set for a landmark legal showdown that would have lasting implications for American trade and the balance of power. The steel and aluminum tariffs imposed by the Trump administration sparked a major lawsuit that would test the boundaries of presidential power. The case, known as American Steel Assembly, United States, quickly became a focal point in the national debate over trade and executive authority. Companies that import steel and rely on these materials for their businesses argued that President Trump had overstepped his legal authority by imposing sweeping tariffs. Their claim centered on the Constitution, which they said gives Congress, not the President, the primary power to regulate foreign commerce and set tariffs, a crucial check in the balance of government. While Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act does grant the President some authority to act in the name of national security, the plaintiffs argued it was never intended to allow such a broad and far-reaching use of the term national security. They warned that if the President could impose tariffs on almost any product simply by citing national security, it would effectively undermine Congress's constitutional role in shaping trade policy and set a dangerous precedent. Lower courts were initially reluctant to challenge the President's judgment on matters of national security, given the traditional deference to the executive branch, but the case pressed on through the legal system. Eventually, the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, signaling a willingness to clarify the limits of presidential power under Section 232 and address the constitutional questions at stake. The core question before the court was this: did the President act within the authority Congress granted, or did he effectively create new trade policy on his own, bypassing legislative intent? The answer would have lasting consequences for the balance of power in Washington, shaping how future presidents and Congress share authority over trade and national security. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled the Trump-era tariffs unconstitutional. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that the President cannot use Section 232 to impose tariffs based on a broad economic definition of national security without clear permission from Congress. The court emphasized that regulating foreign commerce and setting taxes is Congress's job. The majority warned that allowing the President to use national security as a blanket reason for tariffs would upset the balance of power. 3 justices dissented, arguing the President needs broad discretion in national security matters. The decision reignited debate over the proper scope of presidential power. The Supreme Court's decision drew strong reactions. Business groups and manufacturers celebrated, saying the end of tariffs would lower costs and stabilize supply chains. Domestic steel and aluminum producers, along with some unions, criticized the ruling, warning of job losses and unfair foreign competition. Many foreign governments welcomed the decision, seeing it as a step toward easing trade tensions and restoring global trade rules. In Congress, lawmakers were divided. Some praised the ruling as a check on executive overreach, while others worried it weakened the President's ability to protect American industries. The debate over trade policy and presidential power is far from over. The ruling's impact will ripple through politics, business, and international relations. It marks a turning point in how the U.S. approaches trade and executive authority. The conversation about the President's role in trade will continue in Washington. The Supreme Court's ruling had immediate effects. U.S. Customs stopped collecting tariffs on steel and aluminum, instantly lowering costs for importers and manufacturers. Industries that use these metals, like car makers and construction firms, saw relief almost overnight. The decision opened the door for companies to seek refunds on billions paid in tariffs since 2018, though the process may be complex. The ruling also casts doubt on other tariffs imposed under similar national security claims, potentially reshaping U.S. trade policy. In the short term, consumers may see lower prices on goods containing steel and aluminum. However, domestic producers now face renewed competition from cheaper imports, which could pressure profits and jobs. The economic impact is mixed benefits for some, challenges for others. Legal experts are watching to see if this precedent will dismantle other trade barriers. The effects of the ruling will be felt across the economy. The Supreme Court's decision sets a new precedent, limiting the President's power to impose tariffs without clear congressional approval. Future presidents will need explicit authorization from Congress to act on trade for national security reasons. The ruling pushes Congress to take a more active role in trade policy, possibly redefining laws like Section 232. For businesses, this could mean a more stable and predictable trade environment. While it limits presidential flexibility, it strengthens the constitutional balance of power. The decision directly affects prices, jobs, and the rules of trade. Most importantly, it reasserts Congress's authority and clarifies the use of national security in economic policy. This landmark ruling will shape the actions of future presidents and the direction of U.S. trade for years to come.